Heather, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Dr. Heather Walter is a productivity strategist leveraging new elevated perspective to connect dots, creating solutions that are aligned with work processes and people's well-being, resulting in increased performance and productivity. So first and foremost, Heather, in your own words, what exactly, how would you simply categorize what you do?
Yeah. So I do change management for organizations and leadership coaching, so executive coaching, mostly for middle management. And I do this in a way that is a little bit different than I think most people. I use a process. I'm process oriented, and I use a process that I have called recently the play action pass model or process that I can explain to you in a little bit. To help support organizations reach implementation, like systemic and systems wide implementation long term. So I work with middle managers and their teams and their CEOs to kind of help leverage the whole organization and their team.
Very interesting. And do you have so generally your clients more corporate like and just higher level businesses, or do you deal with even smaller businesses as well, or even
Yeah,
individuals?
yeah. So individuals, small businesses, and larger organizations. So actually, it's I yield. I come from the education world. I'm a professor of special education as well. So I come with a very different angle and
Yeah,
very interdisciplinary. And I think that can help in some organizations. I think it's really important to have a holistic lens on things. And so when you're thinking about, change in education, I think it's really important to leverage people in business, people in public health, individuals in other areas of expertise to help where education individuals might not have, those strengths. And
right,
then when we look at the corporate world, um, a lot of times what I have noticed, there's a gap in differentiating trainings, right? Differentiating, not understanding individual strengths, working to context. So looking at small organizations versus large organizations and what we can do differently for those, because we're going to have to do things differently
right.
wherever you are.
Very interesting. Now,
Mhm.
what would you say, Heather, is your uniqueness factor that sets you apart from other people in your industry doing work similar to yourself?
Yeah, I think what I do a little bit differently is through my play action pass model. I think a lot of people really take a more traditional route to training and change management, where they're going in, they're doing a needs assessment, they're saying, okay, this is your problem, and I'm here to help you fix this. And it's really the same thing over and over again. They're not bringing in employee voice, leadership voice, choice. People aren't understanding what there is to change, and then you get a lot of tension and resistance, and so people aren't ready for that, and so productivity goes down, and people are upset, and then people leave, and so you have all of this retention, and you have to train new people to come in, but then the organization's already like kind of at a low. And so, what I do is use this play action pass model to come in, and we start off like with awareness, self awareness. It's very individualized, saying like, where are your strengths? Who are you as the individual? And we see like what are those evidence-based practices that we know work from leadership and from like well-being and organizational psychology and business that we know work, and we say what works with you and what works with your business. And once you gain awareness, then you can say, okay, let's do a needs assessment, let's do all of those things that we need together. We can ask generative questions and strategic questions, and then after we play and explore with those strategies, we go into this action mode. So you're using those strategies, you're modeling for others, and then that pass mode is really um, differentiating them to an individual's needs even more. So some people, you know, have like neurodivergent and need a little bit of a different context, and so leaders
Right.
can support them, and and then you pass it along.
Very cool. Yeah, 100%. I mean, individualization is so essential because
Mhm.
it's not about having this like static approach to solving problems because people respond very, very differently.
Yeah.
Some people are more emotion based, some people are more logic based, and you can even have individuals with that are extremely good at their precise discipline,
Mhm.
but that doesn't necessarily translate to working cohesively within a team. So,
Exactly.
and I like to say that we're generally best defined by our weakest component. So
Mhm.
you can have an extremely high aptitude in your area of expertise, but if you can't work with the team, you probably be less efficient than someone who might have less of an aptitude in the discipline, but knows how to work with others.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, now what do you, I guess you've answered this question, but if you were to look into your industry today and I asked you
Mhm.
what your uniqueness factor is, and then you talked about your play action pass model, but I guess if I were to ask you to hone in on issues within your industry
Mhm.
today, how would you, in basic terms, like what would you
Mhm.
lay out with like general broad issues
Mhm.
and how would you approach solving them?
Yeah, I think, money is a big thing. I think industries spend, I think it's like $95 billion on training a year in the corporate
Uh,
world, and then I think it's like 8 million or something in the education world a year. I mean, it's astronomical. And these are for like one-stop shop trainings that like people come in and they're like doing these trainings on leadership or well-being or whatever the new thing is a- at that moment. And we know that research says that these coming in, doing a training, and then leaving does not work. And
uh,
so, why do we spend all of this money doing these things? And like, because it's easy, right? It's easy. We have all of these other things going on in our organization. We're
and
stressed.
it's a
And
bureaucratic process. It's a
right,
relic. Yeah.
right. And we want quick fixes, right? We don't want to spend that time like embedding the right supports. And so I think that's really the biggest issue. And then, but if we spend that time embedding the right supports and kind of helping that system and cultivating that system, we're spending less money and we're getting really good results and people are staying.
Hmm. So, looking back into your previous work, just out of curiosity, can you list me some of the and maybe some of the common issues you find and the common mistakes people make?
Mhm.
Uh, just a little broadly speaking here, but what I'm asking, I guess, is do you see pattern? Do you see
Oh
very
yeah.
common issues constantly resurface? Oh, yeah, feel free.
Oh, yes, I do. So I think besides the training, I think in like data, um, like looking at data, right? I think that's one big one. We know that you can look at a needs assessment or you can look at a strategic plan and you can read it and say, oh yeah, okay, these are the things that need to happen. And you go through the steps a majority of the time, people don't go through those steps, and then change doesn't happen. Um, but we know that people aren't the average, too, and there's a context behind that, and so I think we generally tend to like skew towards survey development or surveys instead of focus groups and interviews or using them holistically. And so I think really using those together is really beneficial, and then finding really good recommendations and then really working with somebody to implement those in sustainable ways. So as an early childhood educator, we used to say, we usually say, embed in everyday experiences. And like that's what we should all be doing. Like if it doesn't work in your everyday life, you're not going to do it. And so that's kind of another area I think that needs to be worked on.
Do you often see a gap in people being openly receptive? Like, oh yeah, I'll try this here and there,
No,
and
no. Resistance is a big issue. And where I actually love doing, it's funny that I love doing work in
yeah,
like
I feel like the
employee
biggest part of
resistance. Yeah.
I feel like the biggest part of your job is drilling
Yeah.
through people's ego,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like everyone thinks they know better in
Yep.
terms of, and you know what the truth is, sometimes into some capacity they do, because
Hmm.
you might be helping with leadership, but they might be leader in a very specific vertical
Hmm.
that they feel like, oh, it's different, it's more
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
How do you approach getting people to not show resistance and open up to you?
Yeah. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. But really, it's all about listening. And we have to go, I think we really truly have to go back to those fundamental skills that we either have learned or we haven't learned. I was even talking about this to a colleague at a conference the other day. Some of our like fundamental skills we learn in, the teacher preparation program are trust and responsibility and active listening. But, like, we have to take that even further down and say, "Okay, like, how do you actively listen?" And so, instead of my courses and in change management with organizations, I really honed that in and I say, "How do we kind of use that space between 2 people? How do we listen? And, like, what are actual strategies we can use between that table?" And, like, slow it down and say, "Okay, this is the mission of our organization. How are we going to work together? What is my strength? What is yours? And then how do I use my strength? How do you use yours to work in a team?" And it takes a lot of time. And you have to build trust if you're coming into an organization. You have to also listen yourself first. So there's like a bunch of steps. You have to listen, observe, and go in and say, "Oh, yeah, these like I want to be a part. I want to respect your organization. I want to respect
Right.
what you have done and accomplished."
Yeah, it feels like a bit of a chess game. I can only imagine if you're not being
Mhm.
invited by the person you're trying to help, and
Mhm.
you're being pushed into the system from someone in the upper echelons, because sometimes you can almost feel like you're not wanted there.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, and now they're gonna try to do whatever they can to
Mhm.
yes you, but just kind of keep you distant. It's like your first job is like becoming their friend somehow, I would imagine.
Exactly. We did a year-long training, at an organization a couple of years ago, and we thought that everyone was on board, but it was really the leadership that was on board. So we did, a partnership with the leadership, and we designed this whole year-long development, and then when we went and we started to implement it with the staff, the staff were extremely resistant. And we're like, "Huh." And so we started to talk to them and they're like, "Yeah, we didn't want this." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So there was a huge disconnect.
Right.
And what we did was we had to work with them to understand what they wanted. And we started to incorporate that. And so we had to shift our whole year long plan.
Dang.
But they trusted us in the end, but it took a long time.
And do you ever like just come to the conclusion that, hey, sometimes sometimes it's like there's this like a broken system, and
Yeah.
it's just beyond you
Yeah.
to fix the problem,
Yeah.
and it's almost like you're being tossed into the system as like a magic
Mhm.
solution to a far bigger issue. Because
Yeah.
so
Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's
I'm like, "Yes, it's true." Um, yeah, I think, an organization or a person, an individual or a team, you need to be a like, you need to want that help, right?
right.
It cannot be one person. And so I think there is like a ripe time, like if you can get an organization or an individual to, get on board and you can have someone charismatic from the other team who also like is a cheerleader for other people in the organization, that helps. But sometimes, yeah, sometimes it doesn't work and it often
Yeah.
fails and it's devastating, I think, because there's so
Yeah.
much potential.
Because sometimes people, and I can only imagine also, like, sometimes you're like, hey, here's the manager, here are the employees,
Mhm,
kind of figure out the dynamic. And then you realize the problem is just being trickled down from the upper
mhm,
echelons. And the people who are hiring you are telling you to fix from down there, but really the
mhm.
problem is up there. A lot of
Yeah.
times that's the case.
Mhm.
And it's like, hey, these people don't need help. It's you who needs help. Does
Yeah.
that ever happen?
Yeah.
That it's like the boss who's hiring you to fix problems down there. And you're like, there's no
Yeah.
problem down there. The problem is upstairs.
Yeah. And that's where I love to do it's what I call or what some other, experts have called, like, wall-to-wall, change management, where you're really going into the system and you're becoming part of that system, and you're
Yeah.
working with the organization for, longer than a couple of months. You're really kind of becoming and you're working with the leaders, and then you're working kind of within other teams, and you're kind of help shaping things, and then you kind of slowly move
Ease
out.
out. Mm,
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah.
All right, Heather, how could people get in touch with you?
So you can email me at heather@heatherwalterconsulting.com, and then I have an website, heatherwalterconsulting.com,
Sorry, what did you say
www.
the email was?
Um, Heather at
Oh,
heatherwalterconsulting.
Heather at heatherwalterconsulting.com. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yep, and then my
Got it.
website is www.heatherwalterconsulting.com.
Great. Well, Heather, I
Yeah.
appreciate your time and expertise. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.